Hello fellow woodworkers and welcome to this week's edition of the Garage Workshop 10-minute tool review, and this week we're going to be looking at the Parkside Circular Saw. Roll the intro. So this week I am outside, so apologies if you can hear the wind and hear the chickens. So this week we are going to look at the Parkside Circular Saw. It's a product that I've been wanting to buy for quite a while. It's one thing that I didn't think I'd ever use, but actually on quite a lot of my projects it would have been handy if I'd have just had a circular saw that I could have taken away without having the effort of all the extension needs and everything. So as always, first thing we're going to do is open it up and see what's in the box. Okay, so the first thing to do is to remove the cardboard sleeve, and it does say on the packaging in quite a few places that this tool is compatible with batteries in the Parkside 20 volt team series. Apologise to chickens because they know I'm here, they're making a lot of noise. So take the sleeve off, and as is common with Parkside tools, it does come with its own black plastic carry case with a red handle. All Parkside tools come with that, and as usual it's also cable tied at the lock, so let's just cut that off. Okay, so in the case, we have opened the case upside down. So we've got our usual obligatory Parkside circular saw instructions, and I've noticed that a lot of the little tools that have been produced in 2022, there's now a PDF online with a QR code on the front of the manuals, and you can see if you've got a lot of these tools, you can see when the sort of instruction manuals changed, and it was definitely this year. And there's a nice little place in the box handily to keep the instructions. So we've got the actual saw itself, which is really lightweight actually. I'm very surprised at that. And we also have a rail guide which goes in the saw at the front. Oh, now that's interesting. As I put it in, the locking nut has just come away in my hand. Not a fantastic start. Just pop that back in. Okay, and we have an Allen key, and I presume the Allen key is to change the blade. So I'll give you a close-up now of what it looks like, but actually I can already see the thread on that tightener is pretty loose, so hopefully that won't be a problem. Underneath, again, it's basic circular saw as you would expect. The plastic housing which covers the blade. The blade is, it says it's 150 by 1.8 by 16 mil, so not the biggest blade in the world, but not many teeth on that blade either. I'll show you a close-up there. So that should be good for a variety of cuts. So I've got 3 or 4 different types of wood that I want to use today, so we'll set it up now and do the sound test. Okay, so to test the saw, I'm going to first attach the battery, and as I said, this is in the Parkside 20 volt team, so I've got a 2 amp hour 20 volt battery here. The batteries just slide in and out, and actually when it's in, it does extend, as you can see, the length of the tool, but it does give it much more balance. It's a bit top heavy, and obviously the battery is quite heavy anyway, so it does balance up. So to do the sound test, rather than take the blade out, I'm just going to hang it over the edge of the piece of wood I've got set up here, and then we'll gradually bring it up to full speed and listen to how many decibels the engine makes. So let's do that now. Okay, so as I said, it's got a few features. The third one is obviously the slide. I'm just going to actually take the battery out while I'm looking at it just to be safe. Obviously it's got the fence at the front, which measures up to 200 mil or 20 centimeters, which effectively will give you a cutting range of about 8 or 9 as a line guide if you have it through both. If I slide it all the way out, and obviously it's less accurate if you do that, but you can technically do it, you can probably get it to about 17 before it starts to wobble too much. So let's take it out. The other thing about this unit is obviously it's got a 150 mil blade, which we talked about. It's got a manual release, a large red slider for the manual release. I have to say it does feel a little bit flimsy. There's a lot of play in that. It does actually feel quite flimsy when you open it up, so not 100% quality there. And actually every knob that's come in it, and I know this happens sometimes, they, you know, when they get shipped, things move around, but all of the knobs that are in it are pretty loose, and to be fair, the red knobs are not the greatest quality. That's quite often a problem with Parkside tools, and I know online a lot of people either replace these with sort of shop bought ready-made replacements, or sometimes print their own, 3D print their own. But a couple of the really cool features: number one is it's got a laser on the front, which you can press when you're making cuts to give you a guide. We'll try the laser later. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work, to be honest, but it is on there. And one of the other things about this, which I know a lot of other units that aren't around this price point don't have, it's got 2 depths of cutting. So the first one at the front, which you attach with this knob, allows you to make 45 degree cuts. The guide on it is marked in 15, 30 and 45, but obviously you can use any angle you like, but you are able to make cuts of up to 45 degrees, which is a great feature. And the second thing, or the second part of it, is also the depth. At the moment the unit is set to its full depth, but there is a knob here which you undo, and rather than obviously moving the body, it allows you to move the bottom of the guide, so you can have literally as deep or as shallow as you want. And again, on the guide it says this is currently 0, and it says it's got a cutting depth, which is what the manual says, a cutting depth of 48. So quite a good range there, but we're going to start with, we're going to use it set up at its full extension. And as I said, I've got a range of woods, so I'm going to do some different types of wood to see how the battery goes, see what the power's like, and then we'll have a little bit of review at the end. The only thing is, the end, the dust extraction for this is A, not very long, and B, doesn't look like the size that would fit my workshop vac, which I'm hoping it does, and it just doesn't look that way. So we're going to start with a different selection of wood, put the saw through its paces and see how it works. Let's do that now. Okay, so the pieces of wood I've got this sort of external stud work. It's like CLS timber, but this has been treated for outside. So I've got that as the first bit. I've got a piece of what looks like skirting board, although it is ridged at the bottom. Nice piece of wood this, but a piece of sort of skirting board. The third piece I've got is just a common, you know, it's like fibre wood, chipwood. It's part of an old unit that I took apart. And the fourth bit, which hopefully you can see in the background, is some actual floorboards which have been reclaimed. So let's try them all and see where we get to. We'll start off with the studwork timber first. Okay, so as you can see, it went through that really easy, and actually it's left a really lovely smooth cut. There's hardly any tear out at all, and it's felt like it had more than enough power to go straight through that piece of wood. So a really nice start on the first piece of wood. Let's try the piece of floorboard next and see how it copes with that. Again, really nice smooth cut, and as you saw, it just went through a little bit of tear out, but you would expect that on these pieces of wood, but the saw just went straight through it. It was easily powerful to cut that. So let's move on to the piece of kitchen unit now and see if it does as well on that. Okay, so it cut through that piece of wood, but as you probably heard, it had a little bit of an issue towards the end, and actually the cut on the end isn't as good as it was on the beginning, so it did struggle a little bit more with that type of wood, whereas my plunge saw, my Parkside plunge saw, quite often struggles with this type of wood. So I don't know if it just needs to be more powerful to get through it. I'm not sure. I mean, it's made the cut okay, and it's very straight, and there's no sort of real tear out, but it did struggle a little bit. So let's get the big floorboard on here and see how that goes. Okay, so as you saw, went straight through that with no problem at all. And again, it's actually left a really, really nice clean cut on the whole of the board, which is really, really good to see. Actually, it would easily be good enough, and bearing in mind that's the bog standard blade that's on it, if you had a blade with more teeth, I think essentially you'd get an even better cut. But very, very pleased with that. The line's not 100% straight that I've cut it on, I have to be honest, and I'm wondering, that's obviously down to me. Yeah, the line's a little bit wobbly, and I think that's, I felt as I was going through. Obviously I'm not butting this up against anything, this is just scrap wood that's going for the log burner, but there was quite a bit of movement, quite a bit of play in that last cut, and I think if I was using it for something where I wanted a more detailed or more accurate cut, then obviously I'd butt it up either against a fence or just against you know, a carpenter's square, something like that. But it's got through all of those pieces of wood without any problem at all. So let's just carry on with this and see how it goes. Okay, so I've made a number of cuts now. I'm just going to take a look at the blade. I've removed the battery. Yeah, blade looks in just as good a condition as it was. And what I'm going to do now is just do an angled cut, a 45-degree angle cut, and let's see how it handles cutting on an angle in this board, which it did just struggle with a minute ago. So let's make that the next cut. The next cut I'm going to make on this same board is just to reduce the depth, but before I do that, let me just show you the cut. Hopefully you can see that. It's a very clean, everything's blowing over today. It's a very clean cut, not 100% straight, like I said, because obviously I haven't been using anything to straighten it. So when I make this cut at a shallower depth a minute, I'm going to use my carpenter's square and hold it up against to see if I get a truer line. But again, that's down to just me having a bit of a hand wobble. I think if there was a piece of wood there or some sort of block there or some sort of guide, I think it would be fine. So let's do that now. Okay, so a much better cut actually, and on this type of wood, having the blade at a smaller depth is actually probably a better thing. It was a much better cut, and as you can see, it's just, well, it's about 1.5 times the depth of the wood, but it was much easier. When I cut it, first of all, I didn't get it all the way through. A much straighter cut, but one of the issues, which again is down to me, is this. I don't know if you can see it, but the back part here of the clip, this part here, is sitting lower than the bit at the front. So as I passed it over, even though the part at the front had got over and had cleared the wood, this piece at the back didn't. It just caught on that bottom bar there, and it's literally only, hoping you can see, a couple of mil lower, but it's just low enough to catch it on the piece of wood. So you would need to bear that in mind when you're using this on different thicker pieces of wood. The last cut we're going to make now is just try out the laser. Now it's a very sunny day, so I'm not expecting this to work, but let's just have a look and see if we can see the laser and what it looks like. Okay, so we've just popped inside because obviously there was no way outside in the bright sunlight you were going to be able to see the laser. So I'm hoping that if I hold it here, you will be able to see the laser. With a bit of luck, you can catch that up on the camera. It's actually quite a powerful laser. I'm quite surprised how far it stretches. Obviously we're inside the garage workshop now, and it is quite dark in here. I haven't got the lighter on or anything, but it is a nice straight laser. So I'm just going to go and get my square and see how close to being true that is. Okay, so it looks pretty good to me. It's even parallel all the way along. Let's see how far that extends. Okay, so that laser is comfortably reaching 11 centimeters or 110 mil outside the front of the saw, which is actually really good. One thing you do have to be careful with, I don't know if you can see that, but I've really split my finger on the blade. I just caught my finger on the blade and it's really cut it. So you do have to be very careful with the blade that comes with it. It's obviously very sharp, but laser, pretty good, impressed with that, and I think it would give you a really nice cutting guide, certainly if you were cutting a sort of smaller piece, but obviously it's not going to work in bright sunshine in the middle of the day, but then again, not a lot would they? Okay, so what are my overall impressions of the Parkside Circular Saw? Well, let's start off with the things that I think are really good. For such a small unit, it has got a really powerful engine. It says the rotational, non-cutting rotational speed is 3,800 RPMs, and I can see that. It did struggle a couple of bits in couple of the pieces of wood, but I think that was more me forcing it through rather than actually just taking my time and going through. So that's one of the pluses. One of the other things, obviously the laser, which I've just shown you, which I think is absolutely fantastic, very useful, looks dead straight and it's right on the cutting line of the blade, so that looks like a really good feature. And obviously you've got the two adjustable, you've got the adjustable depth and the adjustable angle. Now, it does say in the instructions that at the 45-degree angle, so if you've got it all the way down to 45 degrees, it's got a 36 mil cutting depth. If you've got it like this, it's got anything from 0 to 48 mil cutting depth, so a 12 mil gap in the depth, but you would expect that for a right angle as opposed to a normal straight cut. So really impressed with that. Also the guide that's on it is very good. I've had a go with it on. I didn't record it actually, but it works fine. It holds it on, does everything it should do. Now, what are the things about it I don't like? There are three really important things I don't like. The first one is here. I'm not sure if you can see in there, hopefully you can, but that is the spindle lock button for changing the blade. Now, it seems like it's fine, but if you want to manually change this blade, it is in a really awkward position to get, especially if you've got big hands, it's an awkward position to get your hand in. And even if you change the angle, it's still quite difficult to get your finger in there. You can just about do it if you change the angle on the cutting depth. You can just about do it, but it's awkward, and a lot of these drills, a lot of these saws, they're in more obvious places than that. So that's the first thing, and obviously it would be quite difficult, you know, holding the spindle lock and doing it all in the same go. That's the first thing. The second thing is actually the quality of essentially the knobs that are on it. They're not very good quality at all. which surprises me for Parkside products, because a lot of the ones I've got are absolutely fine, but these ones really aren't. I mean, the one on here, this whole guide isn't great, to be honest, the manual cutting guide. That's particularly bad, but all of them are a little bit wibbly wobbly, and you don't really feel you're getting enough purchase on them when you tighten them up. And I think for me, they would be something that I would be looking to change, even if you bought some replacements, like I said, or made some yourself. They do feel a bit flimsy and not the greatest quality, which, considering the amount of use that undoing and doing they're going to get, that's a bit of a downfall. The last one, the last major one for me, and you will have seen it in the film and I haven't mentioned it until now, is the dust collection. This dust collection does not fit a standard sized hose. Now, my shop vac hose fits everything I've got, every single tool I've got, and this doesn't fit it, as you can see. So when I did the cuts just then, I let the sawdust go out. That didn't worry me too much. If I was working inside, particularly cutting something like MDF, where you're going to have a lot of dust flying around and you're not in an outdoor environment, I think that's an issue. Now, I've made 2 or 3 different collars or sleeves for other tools I've got where the dust extraction doesn't fit, and I've tried all of them on here and not a single one of them fits anywhere. So I'm going to have to sort of make one, or see if there's somewhere on the internet where you can buy them, because that is a big limitation. I know you're outside, but essentially what you're saying is you can't collect the dust that comes out, and as you'll have seen in the videos, there was quite a bit of dust flying around. So my overall impressions, would I buy it if I was you? If you're in the market for a circular saw, you don't mind having a bargain brand one like this, and you've got the money, I think I'm right in saying it was $49.99, I put it on the screen. I think for that, it's a really good buy if you accept the limitations. If you're the sort of person that's going to use this saw 3, 4, 5 times an hour a day, it's not going to be for you. I don't get the feeling it's built for that sort of continual use. But I think for somebody who's going to use it every now and then, it represents good quality. But it only represents good quality if you already have some of the Parkside batteries, the Parkside 20 volt battery team, because as I said, it's expensive. It adds like £20 onto the cost of the base unit, and I've noticed this year a lot of the Parkside tools that have been advertised and have been sold, more and more of them are coming without the battery in them. Now, a lot of the tools that I bought when I bought the my multi-tool and all my other tools like that, they all came, where they weren't corded obviously, they all came with at least one battery in them. But just a trend I've noticed this year, more and more of them do not have the batteries in them. So that is something that you need to take into account, because if you are going to use it a lot, these batteries are good, but they do take quite a while to charge. They take about 45 minutes an hour to properly charge from flat. You're going to need to have 2 batteries, one to go in the background all the time, or you're going to have to wait in between. So that is just something, it's like all power tools. You know, you make a choice on which bed you lay in terms of batteries, but if you've got one of these lying around, then fine. But it does quite clearly say on the pack as well that it has to be this Parkside 20 volt system. I've got some other Parkside batteries that are the same housing as this and would fit this quite easily, but they won't work because they're not the 20 volt battery in the Parkside Team series. So just something to consider, but overall a really nice product. Thank you very much for joining me on this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. As always, please leave me any comments in the box, and don't forget to like and comment on the video. If you're a new subscriber, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. It'd be great to get some more of you, and I've got lots of other 10-minute tool reviews in my back catalogue, so please check those out. Hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye, fellow woodworkers.